And I'd like to read a little bit about our next speaker, and we'll bring him up. So Steve Blake is a research director for Neuroscience Nutrition Foundation. He's offered many classes at the University of Hawaii. He's designed the Hawaii Dementia Prevention Trial, a clinical study at the Hawaii Alzheimer's Disease Center. He's been personally involved in conducting this clinical trial using dietary changes and with nutrients found in his targeted nutritional supplement, Brain and Body Food. Steve is author of the 2008 McGraw-Hill textbook, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified. He is also the author of Mastering Migraines, Parkinson's Disease, Dietary Regulation of Dopamine, How Not to Get a Heart Attack, Arthritis Relief, Nutrients for Dementia, Stop Strokes Before They Start, and Fats and Oils Demystified. He's written Mosby's Alternative Remedies and is co-author of Mosby's Drug Guide for Nurses, 4th edition. Steve Blake authored the Diet Doctor, software for analyzing dietary nutrients. This software allows detailed analysis of your dietary fats, tocopherols, carotenoids, and many other nutrients. He has also maintained one of the world's largest databases of plants used medicinally, called the Herb Doctors. Steve Blake studies scientific research on the connections between food and disease. He sees himself as a translator of the medical literature into understandable, science-based language. Steve Blake attended the University of California. He is a research specialist in nutritional biochemistry. He lives on a solar-powered organic farm on Maui with his wife, Catherine. Please welcome Steve Blake.
Thank you, Randy. Can you all hear me back there? Raise your hand if you have trouble hearing me. Okay, sounds like the sound system is working. This is going to be a fun talk. There's so many diets out there that promise weight loss, and most of them deliver, at least in the short run. But do they satisfy the human needs for nutrition? Well, that's what we're going to look at tonight. And as you see up on the screen in the center on the bottom is the Diet Doctor software, which I've developed over many years to analyze diets. So you put in what you ate in a day and how much you ate in a day, and it analyzes the protein, the fats, which types of fats, the saturated fat, the essential fatty acids. It tells you all about how much of each of the vitamins you got, each of the minerals that are necessary for human life that you got or didn't get. Now, calcium was just mentioned in regard to osteoporosis, so we're going to keep our eye on that as we go along. If you have questions about dietary fats, my book, Fats and Oils Demystified, is at this point in time available on my website, and that's a 2017 version for under $10. It's drsteveblake.com at the bottom of the screen. And I'd love for you all to read that and get to know it. It is based on scientific references, and they're given as notes in the book, of course. Everything I tell you will be based on scientific information. The Diet Doctor itself is based on the USDA Food Composition Database. But they take foods from all over the US and bring them and analyze them in the lab to see how much calcium they have, or how much vitamin A they have, or how much cryptoxanthin or whatever they're analyzing for. And it's very reliable. And I've cross-checked it with databases made in other countries. And for instance, Australia has one. I had to look at the Australian database to find out. Someone said there's a lot of calcium in baby coconuts. Well, they weren't in the USDA database, so I looked in the Australian one. No, sorry, no calcium. But it's nice to know they're around the world and they're agreeing with each other. The book, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, is a McGraw-Hill Professional College textbook. And it's available for under $20 on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. If you have questions about the essential nutrients, vitamins and minerals, and micronutrients, then I have detailed information for you on that, complete with quizzes and finals and all that good stuff. So which nutrients are needed for your brain? Staying alive isn't enough. My wife and I have worked in a neuroscience clinic for many years. And when you're facing Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia, you realize that your brain is really you. I mean, you can lose a leg and you're still you. You can even get cancer and you're still you. But if your brain starts going, the you-ness goes away from you and you become just a shell. So the brain's very important, and nutrition is very important for the brain. For instance, one recent study used the MIND diet as a guide for how they could improve the brain and delay dementia. They delayed it 7.5 years. And the Rush Memory and Aging group managed to delay dementia 11 years with green vegetables. Pretty amazing. Some studies have been done on supplements that help delay brain aging too. Of course, Alzheimer's disease is the most prevalent form of dementia, and the signature feature of Alzheimer's disease is amyloid plaques in the brain. These amyloid plaques are formed when two enzymes, beta secretase and gamma secretase, snip off the amyloid precursor protein, and that goes on to form these amyloid plaques, which are toxic to the brain, wind up killing brain cells. So we looked at ways to stop that. And digging through the research, it seems that there is a substance called SAMe, or S-adenosyl methionine, that quenches the genes that make these enzymes that make the amyloid plaques. Well, you can't make SAMe without folate and vitamin B12. Folate's another B vitamin. If you do get these two, then your body is able to process an undesirable blood chemical homocysteine into SAMe, which then can methylate, quench, and epigenetically change your propensity toward Alzheimer's disease. Fascinating stuff. No drug yet has been proven to do this without terrible side effects. In the clinic, Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience, we are testing a drug that is trying to do this. But these B vitamins are safe, non-toxic, and they work. Also, you can also take the SAMe directly as a supplement, which is normally made in the body, but may not be made enough. So I think it's a good idea to get enough folate and vitamin B12 in your diet. So as we analyze these diets, as I go through tonight, the 11 diets I'm going to analyze, I'll let you know which ones have enough of the folate, which is low in a lot of diets, and vitamin B12, which pretty much needs to be supplemented either way, no matter what you eat. Vitamin E and carotenoids protect neuronal membranes. The nerve cells in the brain have protective membranes made of phospholipids with long polyunsaturated fatty acids, principally EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. These two very fragile fatty acids are found in such great amounts that the brain membranes of the brain cells are very prone to oxidation and cell death. And during the course of Alzheimer's disease, the brain cells die off until half of them are left, and the brain is shrunk down to half its size. Also, vascular dementia, the brain cells die off. So we would like the brain cells to be protected from damage and to preserve whatever brain cells we have left. So we're going to look at the diets and make sure they have enough vitamin E and carotenoids. Now, vitamin E is deficient at last check in 93% of Americans. So if people in this room were representative Americans, very few of us would have enough vitamin E. Hopefully, we're all smart enough to eat a few nuts or seeds. There are 4 enzymes. There are actually 2 enzymes that need 4 minerals in order to protect our brains and the rest of our body. Each cell in our body, each day, is attacked between 10,000 and 100,000 times by free radicals. That's a lot of, I mean, you multiply that out times the billions of cells in our body, you'll see that's a lot of free radical attack. So our body has antioxidant systems that protect us, but they don't work without the minerals that are essential cofactors: selenium for glutathione peroxidase, and zinc, copper, and manganese for superoxide dismutase. Now, the manganese form of superoxide dismutase is crucial to get enough of. And so we're going to look at the diets and make sure you're going to get enough manganese. Some of the diets are very low in manganese. So your mitochondrial membranes will get damaged, destroyed, and the cells will die through programmed cell death or apoptosis. Of course, we need vitamin C. That's a daily essential nutrient. It's found in fruits and vegetables. I'll look at the different diets and see which ones have the vitamin C. The vitamin E, when it goes to a brain cell and sticks its little fatty poker into the brain cell, it can neutralize a free radical that would otherwise damage or kill the brain cell, but then it needs vitamin C to come along and recharge it in order for it to go again. So those two work together, as many of the antioxidants work together. Polyphenols, a broad class of compounds in plants. And, you know, the catechins in tea or the anthocyanidins in berries, these are very beneficial as anti-inflammatories and antioxidants. So eating lots of whole plants really helps. And we'll check that a little. There are not databases of polyphenols, unfortunately, so it's hard to rate the diets that way. And then as far as your brain goes, we all know that some people have clogged arteries, and those clogged arteries can break off a piece of plaque, form a clot, and form a heart attack, killing off the cells in the heart. Well, the same process can happen in the brain, where clogged arteries, the plaque breaks off and plugs an artery or capillary, and that kills off brain cells. In extreme case, a stroke looks like someone took a blowtorch to the brain. It's just a big burnt hole in the brain. And of course, death is a very common consequence of strokes. But there are many smaller strokes. The smallest strokes are called, well, perhaps transient ischemic attacks, where a small artery or capillary plugs and then unplugs, but there's still damage to the brain cells. Some of them die. Then there's vascular dementia, where little by little, these clogged arteries, not necessary to have clogged arteries. For instance, in China, there's Guizhou province with 750,000 men who've never had a heart attack because they don't have plaque, because of their diet. They're very poor. They can't afford meat. They don't eat cheese. So unfortunately, they cannot afford a heart attack. Actually, that's a good thing, isn't it? So less saturated fat has been tied into less vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is almost always coexistent with Alzheimer's disease, and in its own right, it's a major cause of dementia and death. So that's where a tiny capillary gets plugged by the plaque, and then this little tree of brain cells dies. And maybe it gobbles up a memory from childhood, or maybe it gobbles up your executive decision-making functions, or maybe it gobbles up a part of your brain that controls you know, your eyes or other parts of your body. Little by little, the brain gets gobbled up. And if Alzheimer's disease is coexistent, then more of the brain cells die. All of this is helped dramatically by diets. So I'm introducing to you why diets are so important for brain health. Now, we really need some protein every day. And estimates have been made all over the world on how much protein we need in a day. And the estimates for the Institute of Medicine are quite lengthy. Over 100 pages, over 100 citations. Very carefully, they estimate how much protein we need. They come up to 10% of our calories as protein as a basic minimum. They've done this to the World Health Organization. They've very carefully evaluated populations all over the world, and they've come up with about 10% of calories as protein needed. If you look at the different countries like Canada and all around the world, each one has come up with 10% of calories as protein as a daily minimum if you're not wounded, pregnant, and for people over 50, that equates to about 46 grams of protein daily. Now, that's interesting because as we look at the diets, you'll see there's quite a broad variation in the amount of protein in the diets I'll show you. Excess protein can be a problem for arthritis and bone loss. You asked about osteoporosis. Excess protein does tend to leach calcium from the body, and in my book, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified, I give the algorithm for that, how much excess protein, how much calcium loss, and I'll show you a graph of that as we go along. Fatigue is related to excess protein too, and dopamine production is related to protein. For instance, people with Parkinson's disease have trouble making enough dopamine because once you're diagnosed, perhaps half of your dopamine-producing cells have already died. Well, it turns out that we make dopamine, we make levodopa, the precursor to dopamine, from tyrosine, an amino acid that's abundant in diets. But that amino acid can't get into the brain if protein is excessive. And as you'll see when I show you these diets, protein is excessive in all but one diet. And that diet has half the calories you need, so it really hardly counts. But in all diets where people are getting enough calories, protein is very excessive. ranging from 100 to 150 to 200 grams in excess of our daily needs, thus limiting our ability to produce dopamine and other catecholamine neurotransmitters as well. And dopamine, as you know, is involved in mood, sleep, all kinds of interesting sexual aberrations and other things. So we'd like to make the right amount of dopamine. Fat's a big subject. And the fact is that there are good fats and bad fats. There are fats we need. There's only 2 fatty acids we need. Linoleic acid, the omega-6 fatty acid from plants, and alpha-linolenic acid, the omega-3 from plants. We do not need EPA or DHA from fish oils. We make that in our bodies. There's a whole chapter on how we make that in my book on fats and oils, Demystified. So we do need a couple of essential fatty acids every day, and we need the carotenoids, which are fatty-based, and vitamin E, which is found in fatty foods. So there's some important fatty things we need. We have a requirement for cholesterol. How much cholesterol do we need every day? Anyone care to tell me? 0.
Grams of it.
Pardon me?
You need grams of it.
How many?
You need grams of cholesterol. And your body produces it in the liver.
Yeah, your body actually produces an enormous amount every second of cholesterol in the body. Our daily requirement is 0. Humans need no cholesterol in their diet. It's been clearly established that 0 is the exact right amount. The Institute of Medicine says, well, we can't really say 0 because so many people eat so much. But the fact is that disease goes down, 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 down until you get to 0. It can't go down any further. Now, what's the amount of saturated fat we need in our diets every day? How much saturated fat? 10 grams, 50 grams?
0.
0 again. Oh, well. But we can't get 0 saturated fat either. There's a little saturated fat in beans, very little, or avocados a tiny bit, or peanut butter has a little bit. Not too much in any of those things. However, there are things that do have too much saturated fat, and not all saturated fatty acids are the same. There's only 3 that are really deadly for our arteries. Can you name the 3 saturated fatty acids that are deadly for our arteries? It's lauric, myristic, and palmitic acid, those 3. Their chain length is 12, 14, 16. Other than the carbon chain being different length, they're identical. All saturated fatty acids are identical except for their chain length. So those 3 fatty acids we really need to watch out for. The little short ones, they just burn up as energy. They don't hurt us. Yes?
How about coconut milk? 60% saturated fat?
Coconut milk, you would not exceed your daily limit for saturated fatty acids if you ate 1/5 of 1 can of coconut milk. So you're perfectly fine to add a little coconut milk, but there is a limit to saturated fatty acids. And again, you look at all over the world what the limit is now. The Australian Beef Council stopped the World Health Organization from lowering the limit from 10 to 7. Just flat stopped them. An amazing political move on their part. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? But in every civilized country, it seems that, in fact, the American Heart Association keeps reducing it. It used to be 7, now they're saying below 6 grams, 6% of calories every day. So it's a little hard to get that way if you eat a lot of meat and cheese. Yeah?
What about correlation of like men's health, testosterone being converted from cholesterol?
Right, testosterone is made from cholesterol, and in fact, the body makes, I have it in my fats and oils book, and the number is about this long, how many cholesterol molecules are made every second in the body. So cholesterol is made, about half of it in the liver, a lot of it's made in the adrenal glands, it's made in every cell in our body, it's essential for structuring our cells, but we don't need to eat any, we need to make it, and we do. So it's automatic that many of our steroid hormones are made from cholesterol, good point. And did you know our stress hormones are made from cholesterol? And when you're really stressed out, your production of cholesterol increases and your blood cholesterol goes up. So if you're really stressed out and get a cholesterol test, you might get a false high test on that. Now, outside of fats, which, of course, if you can lower your saturated fat, it's been very well proven in thousands of studies that heart attack risk goes down. Less saturated fat, less heart attack risk, less stroke risk. It's real clear. Obesity goes down because, of course, fat has 9 calories per gram. Strokes go down, diabetes, pain, and inflammation all go down if you can lower that saturated fat. And of course, carbohydrates come in the good and the bad variety. I like to use the glycemic load for testing carbohydrates. How fast do they enter the bloodstream? The glycemic index tells you. The glycemic load tells you how fast they enter the bloodstream and how much there is to begin with. The nice part is that with glycemic load, you see blueberries really don't have much sugar. They enter the bloodstream quickly, so the glycemic load says safe for diabetics. Whereas if you just use the glycemic index, because they enter quickly, even though there's a tiny amount, they say don't eat them if you're diabetic. Well, that's terrible. They're very protective of the exact kind of damage that happens in the arteries during diabetes. So you want to be slimmer, have smoother energy and better digestion. You need better carbohydrates. I don't think no carbohydrates is possible anyway. And we want vitamins and minerals. Don't we want the essential minerals and vitamins? I'll go over those. Sodium in excess has been linked to high blood pressure. I can notice myself. If I eat something very salty, like some restaurants put a lot of salt in their food, and I can feel my heart pumping harder. And if I take my blood pressure, I see it goes up when I eat a lot of salt. It's really clear. So it's really important for stroke damage, both hemorrhagic and ischemic stroke, to lower that sodium intake down to ideally 1 gram per day, but getting it down to 2 grams would be about the best most people can do, and that's still better than what most people do, as you'll see. Now, food fiber is crucial, and I think we need about 40 grams a day of food fiber. It's really important for, let's say, digestive comfort, smooth moving, let's say. Also, fiber helps remove cholesterol from the body, certain types of fiber, mucilaginous fiber, the soft fiber. So we definitely going to look at the diets and analyze for fiber too. And we need more antioxidants. These antioxidants protect not only our brain, but our entire body, our arterial system, so atherosclerosis isn't so bad. So let's take a look at these diets. Here's what I'm going to analyze for you today. Now, my analysis is very scientific. There's no opinion involved. I'm simply going to tell you what they have, what they don't have, where they have excesses and where they have minuses. The standard American diet. Okay, often abbreviated as SAD. I don't know why. The Atkins diet, may he rest in peace. The Zone diet, this has been a very popular diet. The paleo diet, everyone's heard of the paleo diet. It's just ever so popular. The bulletproof diet, has anyone heard of the bulletproof diet in this room? Okay, lots of people have heard of the bulletproof diet, a well-known diet. And the South Beach diet, often used for weight loss with the picture of the woman getting slimmer in her bathing suit. A transition vegetarian diet, this is really not a good vegetarian diet. There are good and bad ones, but this one's not so good. I'll describe each diet in detail for you. And then the Mediterranean diet. We've all heard how great the Mediterranean diet is. I would say if you're eating a standard American diet and you switch to a Mediterranean diet, it would be tremendously helpful. But then if you're eating a Mediterranean diet and you switch to another diet that's healthier, then that would be a lot healthier too. So it's not the healthiest diet, but it's much better than some others. Then there's a plant-based diet, a vegan whole food diet. There's also a vegan raw diet and a super low-fat diet. So we're going to see how these do. So right now, which one would you pick as the healthiest diet on this list? What's not on there?
Ketogenic.
Which is it?
Ketogenic.
Yeah, the low-carb diets are kind of represented by the Atkins and the bulletproof diets are both low-carb, high-fat.
Ketogenic is high.
Right. I would say the bulletproof diet is extremely much like a ketogenic diet. You'll see with the fat content and the carbohydrate content is very ketogenic. In our clinic, when epileptic children do not respond to 3 sequential drugs for epilepsy, then they're put on a ketogenic diet. And since I was faculty nutritional biochemist, they would ask me, will you put this child on a ketogenic diet? And I had to say that I don't hurt children. This is not something I'm willing to do. So let's look at these diets and see how they look. Well, here's a standard American diet for you. Breakfast, cornflakes with whole milk, coffee, and a donut. Doesn't that donut look good? Yeah. Oh, it looks good. It tastes good. Just afterwards, you feel bad. Lunch, a cola drink, a double fast food hamburger, French fries, and a chocolate shake. That's a typical American lunch at some fast food joint. Dinner, a quarter chicken with white rice, iceberg lettuce with Thousand Island dressing with some soft vanilla ice cream for dessert. Okay, here we have a standard American diet. How's it do? Well, the protein's a bit excessive here at 149 grams. How much do you need? 46. So you're getting 100 grams of excess protein. The fiber is looking pretty sad. You can see the way it works is the top bar shows how much fiber you got and the bottom bar how much you need. So it's about half. The cholesterol's pretty impressive at 556. Most of that comes from eggs, of course. They're real cholesterol bombs. But it's very high in cholesterol. And as I was explaining at dinner tonight, when cholesterol is oxidized, such as when eggs are cooked, or shrimp, they're both very high in cholesterol, it forms oxysterols. And the oxysterols are then absorbed, made into chylomicrons, circulated through the bloodstream. But the oxysterols, since they're oxidized, damage the signaling proteins of the chylomicrons, which are like LDL. They circulate fatty things through the blood, which is a watery medium. Once they're damaged, those chylomicrons can stick to the inside of a cell, stick to the inside of the wall of the artery, and then the immune system reacts with foam cells, macrophages, and you get the atherosclerotic plaque growing. Another big problem with excess cholesterol, which you'll see in several of these slides, several of these diets, is that people live for decades with arteries that are clogged, but they don't die right away from a heart attack. So it takes an event such as a big bomb of cholesterol entering your bloodstream, say from a big omelet, a shrimp omelet, you know, could almost be used as a murder weapon in some murder mystery. The cholesterol there would be double that. So it goes through the arteries, and when it's supersaturated, the cholesterol forms sharp, razor-sharp crystals that can slice the plaque away, causing it to block an artery, form a clot, and either cause a heart attack or a stroke. So for these reasons, I'm going to say, and we need zero cholesterol, better if it was less. Now down at the bottom, we have the amount of saturated fat, 14% of calories. 7% or less would definitely be better, safer. There's also a ratio of LA to ALA 7.8, not too bad. It should be 3, but you'll see that almost none of the diets achieve this. Let's take a look at the antioxidants. Carotenoids are extremely low, and most of the vitamin A is in the preformed form, which is not an antioxidant. Vitamin C and vitamin E are extremely low on the American diet. Those antioxidants are essential daily nutrients, but they're not being provided. We wonder why there's a heart attack every 32 seconds in America and a stroke every 43 seconds. It's pretty obvious. Now, we also have folate over here, half as much as possible. Catherine?
A while back when we were switching to what we thought was a healthier diet, I asked Steve to analyze, you know, if we were getting everything we needed. And he said, I'll get back to you. And a year later, he said, here, I've got the program. We can now analyze all of our diet, you know, all of our foods and find out if we're getting exactly what we need. So now I kind of trust him.
Actually, she uses a diet doctor all the time to write her cookbook. She'll analyze the recipe to find out how much of this and that it has in it. And I think it's tremendously useful. Of course, all these slides are generated with that too. How else are you going to know? I take those diets, I analyze them, and I present you with the facts of the diet. The fact is, this diet is really a disaster, okay? Minerals, well, the calcium came out okay on the standard American diet. Magnesium was a little low, manganese was a little low, sodium, of course, was double what we need. but not too bad on the minerals overall. You'd expect a standard American diet to be worse. So the sodium came mostly from the fast food hamburger and milkshake and cereal. So you find a lot of sodium everywhere. It was out of 2,900 milligrams or 2.9 grams of sodium, you might get more bone loss and higher blood pressure from all this extra sodium. When you get excess sodium, it leaches calcium from your bones. There's an algorithm for that, also in my Vitamins and Minerals Demystified book. And when I do comparative charts tonight, I'll show you that. Now about the Atkins diet. Breakfast, 1 egg, 6-ounce Canadian bacon, butter, egg yolk, and lemon juice. Lunch, chicken wings, 1 tablespoon of butter, hot pepper sauce. Dinner, white fish. Now see, I picked a representative diet, and this is one of his least destructive diets. Oil, lemon juice, garlic clove, whole milk ricotta, plain yogurt, and fresh chives. So this is the diet that's designed by a medical doctor. And you know how many hours of nutrition science medical doctors are required to take in medical school? Anyone know the number there? 1 hour. You had 1 hour, often at 2 hours, sometimes as many as 3 hours though. So obviously he's highly qualified to design a diet. So let's see how he did. Well, the protein is not as high as it was in the last diet. It's only 70 grams in excess of our requirement. Probably not too good for building bones. And the fiber is quite interesting. Do you see the top line? No, you don't. What fiber?
It's really hard to see white on light blue.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Black and bigger letters, we'd be able to read it.
Thank you. Yeah, anyway, the fiber is 0.15 grams for daily need of 40, virtually zero. I mean, the bar is not there because there's nothing there. There's just, I mean, I don't know how people on the Atkins diet ever manage to go to the bathroom, like once a week maybe. Total cholesterol, 780 milligrams. It's been called a heart attack diet by many people, and I think that's not too far off base. The saturated fat levels is 23% of calories. So almost a quarter of his calories are made up of saturated fat, and that's not so good for your arteries, your risk of strokes and heart attacks, and many other problems. So maybe it's not such a great diet. Let's see, where did the saturated fat come from? Well, you can see that the butter added most of the saturated fat to the diet. Without the butter, the chicken, and the pork, well, the saturated fats would be pretty good. Of course, then you wouldn't be eating anything on this diet. But that's where it comes from. The carotenoids were extremely low, just negligible protection from colorful fruits and vegetables. The folate was also circled in red, very, very low. And the vitamin E and vitamin C, extremely low. Not enough fruits and vegetables, not enough nuts and seeds for the vitamin E. Oh, look at that calcium. That's pretty sad. The top line is very, very low. Calcium here at a couple hundred milligrams versus a need of 1,000 or 1,200. It's just not enough to keep your bones strong. So this diet would not just be the heart attack diet, it'd be the hip-breaking diet too. We do need some calcium every day. It depends on your protein sodium levels. The minimum would be about 800. Some people say lower, but I like to be cautious and get 800. And then on a high protein, high sodium diet, you probably need at least 1,200 milligrams of calcium every day, but he's only getting about 200 on this. Pretty scary. The magnesium, also essential nutrient. By the way, when magnesium levels get this low, cramps in the legs at night can keep people up. And it's a pretty common symptom of a diet like this. And then you see the manganese level. I'm sorry, that bar is so small you can barely make it out. No protection to the mitochondria in any of the cells in the brain or the body. The superoxide dismutase cannot protect the energy factories in our body, so they die off, initiating cell death. Let's move to the zone diet. Maybe this one's a little bit better. The theory is 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat. Again, this diet was not designed by someone who understands nutrition. I'm not sure what he designed it for. But you'll see egg whites, you see, for breakfast, so there's less saturated fat. Non-fat cheese, okay, he's trying. Olive oil, rye toast with peanut butter and grapes. There's no butter in there. You see what he's trying to make it a little healthier. Lunch, lobster, light mayonnaise, pita pockets, salad, and an apple. Well, let's check the cholesterol with that lobster. I think that might be a little high. Afternoon snack is low-fat cheese and orange. For dinner, he has the lean ground beef, not the fatty ground beef. Non-fat cheese, onions, mushrooms, bell peppers. Now, they're spices. Those are going to add some antioxidants to this diet. And the kidney beans, too. Tomatoes, very good. A peach, wow. Late night snack, pretty weird. How would you like sliced turkey with strawberries and peanuts? Sounds pretty weird. Okay, but that's the diet. So how'd he do? Protein's 140 grams, and you need 46. So pretty excessive on the protein. So that could be a problem. And then the cholesterol, 380 milligrams, mostly from the lobster. And the saturated fatty acids, 9.8%. Not too bad. That's a little bit closer to the 7 or under that we would like to see. So by doing all the non-fat this and that in the diet, he's pushed it down a little bit. Total carotenoids, still pretty pitiful. Very, very low, circled in red on the top. And on the bottom, you see the vitamin C made it. The vegetables he put in there and the peach, they pushed that vitamin C up to acceptable levels. I mean, more would be better, but at least he's made the RDA and more. Vitamin E, still deficient. Did you notice nuts in that diet? I didn't notice any, and that's noticed in the lack of vitamin E here. So the minerals look pretty good. Calcium and all the other minerals worked out pretty well in the zone diet. So that's a bit of an improvement, don't you think? What's next? The paleo diet. So simple, a caveman can do it. I've got a cartoon coming up for you. Breakfast, a spinach omelet with mushrooms, fresh strawberries. So the theory is that in the old days, many thousands of years ago, this guy would go out and gather eggs from bird nests, and he would pick mushrooms and strawberries and somehow with a flint or something make a fire and cook up his omelet. Lunch, salmon. So he just wade into the ocean and grab a salmon for lunch with a salad. The salad has lettuce, carrots, avocado, and celery. Now, he calls it a linseed oil dressing. That's actually flaxseed would be more accurate. Linseed is cooked flaxseed oil, which becomes toxic. Of course, the linseed oil dressing will have a lot of omega-3s, but it also may be a bit rancid. Better to get your omega-3s directly from ground up flax seeds rather than relying on the oil. Because rancid oils can produce malondialdehyde in the body, which can cause DNA adducts, which can increase your risk of cancer. So rancid oils are to be avoided. And these triply unsaturated fatty acids, like the omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid, are prone to rancidification when made into an oil. So he had chicken with broccoli and tomatoes. So I guess he caught a chicken, maybe threw a rock at it or something. I'll tell you the real story in a minute. It's really fun. A late night snack, walnut, cinnamon, and an apple snack. Now that walnut's going to provide some vitamin E. So this is the real story of how the paleo diet goes. Day 1, ants on a stick. You know when you're full when the stinging makes your mouth numb. Day 2, fighting a large bird for some rotting glyptophdon meat. Plenty of cardio plus pound shredding trichinosis. Day 3, fruits, worms, and the worms in the fruit. Days 4 through 6, nothing. No wonder it's a weight loss diet. Day 7, tree bark and grass. After 3 days of fasting, you'll be surprised at how yummy non-caloric plant matter is before and after. You see, she's lost weight on the paleo diet. Anyway, something fun for you to look at. So how'd it do? 140 grams of protein, almost 100 grams in excess of your needs. So it's going to depress dopamine production mightily. It's going to be a problem for bones because it's going to leach calcium out of your bones. 550 milligrams of cholesterol, well, that's 550 milligrams more than you need. Could be a problem with initiating strokes or heart attacks. The percentage of fat's pretty impressive at 50% fat. Now, most bodies recommend 25 to 35% of calories as fat. But you'll see one diet had, I think, 60% of calories as fat, but still didn't go over the saturated fat intake. This one, the saturated fat is 10%. So not too bad, not as bad as some, not good enough if you don't want a heart attack or a stroke. And the ratio of linoleic acid to alpha-linolenic acid, 1.9, excellent, and that's of course because of the rancid oil poured over the salad. The carotenoids are very high. The thing about the paleo diet is that berries, fruits, vegetables, these are very high in carotenoids, so he did pretty well on the carotenoids as the caveman guy. And the vitamin C was good. Most of the vitamins were okay. You notice that vitamin E was still low, not enough of those walnuts. He should have found some more walnut trees and cracked some walnuts back in the Paleolithic era. Now the calcium's a bit of a problem. 350 milligrams with 1,000 milligrams needed, or 1,200, that's just not enough. And this is typical of a low-carb diet, is that you're just not getting enough calcium to keep osteoporosis at bay. We work a lot with elders, and one of the most life-changing events in an elder's life is a broken hip. Once a hip is broken, mobility goes out the window. Usually a rest home is the next stop, and lack of interest in life from lack of mobility. So hip breakage is very much to be avoided, and one way to avoid it is not to have your bones eroded by a diet designed by an anthropologist rather than someone who understands nutrition. This diet was designed by an anthropologist. Okay, now we get to the bulletproof diet. Let's see, I use a representative diet off the website. Breakfast, 2 eggs poached with 3 slices of bacon and 2/3 cup of avocado. And I didn't even have the coffee with a whole stick of butter in it. Lunch, 1 3/4 cup chicken with a lettuce and avocado salad. Okay, I like the lettuce and avocado salad, that sounds good. With olive oil and lemon juice dressing, sounds pretty healthy. 2 pieces of beef pot roast with 1 stalk of broccoli and 2 tablespoons of butter. Well, that doesn't sound so unhealthy, does it? Until you analyze it. 230 grams of protein. Wow! And you need how much? 46? That's an amazing excess of protein. The fatigue products built up in your body would be just enormous. Feeling tired and aching muscles. Ooh. And the cholesterol, well, this one tops the chart at 1,141 milligrams of unneeded cholesterol in the body. That's really, really excessive. The percent of fat, 60%, 61% rounded up of fat, and 19% of calories as saturated fat. Not the highest we've seen, but still extremely high. So if you say wanted a broken hip and a heart attack, this diet could be for you. 24 milligrams of calcium, very, very low. You know, if it were a low protein diet, you need at least 800. On a high protein diet, you need even more. Later on, I'll tell you how when you add in the high protein and high sodium and adjust it, how much calcium you get. Hint, it will be negative each day. And then the manganese, you notice, is very low on this. Now, which enzyme does essentially need manganese to protect our mitochondrial action? Which enzyme for manganese? Superoxide dismutase. That's the one. We must have manganese, and you're not getting it on this diet. Now, of course, you could eat this diet, and you could take, you know, a vitamin supplement like our brain and body food, and you would at least get your manganese. But there's not enough calcium to overwhelm the tremendous losses on this diet. How about the South Beach diet? Do you look like this and want to look like that? Well, the South Beach diet is advertised for you. So breakfast, cereal with non-fat milk and fresh strawberries, coffee with non-fat milk, and 1 hard-boiled egg. Sounds kind of Spartan, doesn't it? Lunch, tuna salad with tomatoes and lettuce. Tomatoes are going to have some vitamin C. Skim yogurt with dietetic jam. Okay, no sugar in that jam. Dinner, beefsteak with green beans. Green beans are very healthy. Red peppers are very healthy. Olive oil, a green salad with Italian dressing, and for a late-night snack, a healthy cantaloupe. Lots of vitamin C and good things like that. Protein not as excessive as the others, only about 100 grams of excessive protein. Not bad. have you noticed that everybody says, where do you get your protein and are you getting enough protein? But as we look at the diets, the low protein doesn't seem to be as big a problem as high protein. In fact, I've been analyzing diets for 35 years, and before the diet doctor, I had to do it by hand. It was very tedious. And I have found 3 people with low protein in their diets. And these people were all women under 80 pounds who ate less than half the calories needed to sustain life. Other people I've analyzed, their protein was not deficient. They only get 3/4 the calories needed to sustain life. So it's very, very difficult to get low protein. Very hard. And if you want to talk about quality of protein, in the diet doctor, I've got charts of the amino acids needed and the amino acids in each diet that I analyze. It's always fine. I've never seen a limiting amino acid yet in a real diet. I could design a diet like if you only ate quinoa and nothing else, yes, there would be limiting amino acids, but I can't find anyone to do it. So it's not a real diet, it's a hypothetical. Cholesterol's pretty high at almost 500 milligrams. Percent of fat here, 45.8% fat. Pretty high. The ratio of LA to ALA, 7.5, not too far off from the ideal of 3:1. How are they doing on carotenoids? Good. The green circle means good. Vitamin E was a bit low, and the folate was a bit low too in this diet. The minerals, not too bad. The calcium was just a smidge low, but did pretty good on the minerals. The sodium wasn't excessive. There were not a lot of processed foods in this diet. So you can see how we're kind of progressing through diets and get a little better. Now here's a diet that should be good but isn't. Breakfast. 2 eggs scrambled, 2 breakfast patties. These breakfast patties, by the way, are absolutely delicious. 1 cup of coffee with a cup of low-fat milk.
What kind of patties?
A breakfast patty is made by Morningstar Farms, and they're little sausage breakfast patties that are scrumptiously delicious.
What's it made of?
It's got some soy and some gluten and some other things in there. So not a healthy, it's a processed food high in sodium too, by the way. So lunch, a cheese sandwich with Colby, toasted white bread, mayo, lettuce, and tomato, a small bag of potato chips with a cup of low-fat milk. This is how not to do a vegetarian diet. Pardon?
Who's Colby? Cheese sandwich with Colby. Who's Colby? Cheese. It's a type of...
Colby is a type of cheese. It's a yellow-orange cheese, very much like cheddar. Dinner, macaroni and cheese, a small green salad, frozen corn side dish with 1 cup of low-fat milk, chocolate cake and ice cream. Well, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Let's see how they do. Protein, only 109 grams. Can you believe it? They're less than 100 grams over the needed protein. Wow. And the cholesterol, 522. Well, eggs are cholesterol bombs, so of course the cholesterol is very, very high. A lot of oxidized cholesterol in that diet that could precipitate a heart attack or a stroke. Yes?
If you have a sunny side up.
Oh, microphone, please.
Okay, it's quite clear that cooking egg yolks is not good. From a lot of people talk about that. But how about sunny side up eggs where the white is cooked and the yolk is runny?
Yeah, there'll be less oxysterols in that. And of course, some health nuts put eggs in their blender drinks and they're not cooked at all. So you'll still get a lot of cholesterol, and a lot of that will oxidize in your body because, of course, eggs don't have any antioxidants, except, well, there's a little lutein in some eggs with a really dark yellow yolk. About as much in a dozen eggs as in 1 leaf of kale, but there's a little bit anyway. There's really nothing in eggs that anyone needs. Okay, let's go over what's in eggs. Protein, of course we know that, but we all get too much protein, so well, it's not such a good thing. Cholesterol, but we don't want any cholesterol, so that's not so good. Lutein, but so little it doesn't matter. And then phosphatidylcholine. Now that's an essential, well, it's not an essential nutrient. Choline is a possible needed nutrient. There's problems with choline too. In meat eaters, choline is processed into TMAO, which can be very liver toxic and increase atherosclerosis. So there are problems with choline too. And of course, you can get this phosphatidylcholine from many other sources, including beans. And I would recommend beans for your phosphatidylcholine rather than eggs for lots of good reasons. So let's look at the percent of fat, 15%. Well, that's as bad as the standard American diet and saturated fat. And of course, some of that comes, not too much in eggs, but it comes from the cheese. Cheese is very high in saturated fat, and there was cheese in this diet, on ice cream too, so you see where it all comes from. The carotenoids, pretty low. In fact, the antioxidants are very low. The vitamin C, the vitamin E, all the antioxidants are extremely low in this diet. And that's a shame, because we need them to protect our brains from dementia in our bodies and our arteries and every part of our body. The magnesium was a little low, and the manganese was a little low, and the sodium was very high. The processed food and all the salt was not really beneficial. Let's look at the Mediterranean diet. This is supposed to be the best diet in the world, some people say. And compared to some of the ones we've seen, it's certainly a lot better. Breakfast, cereal with skim milk, a banana, margarine on whole wheat toast, half teaspoon olive oil. Let's hope that margarine didn't have trans fatty acids in it. A half ounce of sliced almonds. Hey, there's some vitamin E in the almonds and the olive oil. For lunch, chicken breast with mushrooms, a hard roll, olive oil again, a cup of spinach. A cup of cooked spinach has some amazing nutrition in it. Romaine lettuce, radish, balsamic vinegar. Dinner is pasta with a lot of vegetables on it, Parmesan cheese, white beans, garlic, whole wheat bread, grapes. And for a snack, plain yogurt with a half cup of blueberries. Those blueberries are going to have some nice proanthocyanidins to protect your brain. Protein, only 100 grams. Not quite low, though, is it? 46 is sufficient. 186 milligrams of cholesterol. Well, so far, that's the best we've seen. Not, of course, the zero that we need. Saturated fat at about a little over 7, not bad, almost acceptable. So you can see why doctors are saying, please eat the Mediterranean diet, because it has half the saturated fat the diet you're eating now. It's much better. And of course, the early real Mediterranean diet eaten on Cyprus was much healthier than this fake Mediterranean diet that we're seeing now. The carotenoids were very good. All those vegetables, the blueberries, and other fruit really contributing to a nice carotenoid protection of our brain cells and our cells all throughout our body. The vitamin E was still a bit low, but better, definitely better. The minerals were pretty good, not too bad. They got the minerals you need. Sodium wasn't too high. There's not a lot of processed foods in this diet. So there's a step up from the good old American diet. Now here we have a vegan whole food diet. This is called a whole plant food diet. For breakfast, 1 large papaya, a large banana, 2 cups of oatmeal, and 2 teaspoons of blackstrap molasses. For lunch, 3/4 cup cooked navy beans, 2 large tomatoes, and a cup of cooked broccoli, and these are made into 6 corn tortillas with 1 cup of potatoes, providing a little ballast in those little tortillas there, or enchiladas, I guess. Little Italian dressing. Dinner is a medium avocado, 4 slices whole wheat bread with cucumber, a whole cup of cooked chard. There's a lot of nutrition in that, quite a bit of calcium too. 1/4 cup of almonds, and then a snack popcorn with spirulina on it. How does this work out? Where's the protein? Any guesses on how much protein in this diet?
17.
Well, let's take a look. Protein worked out to about 74 grams. Well, that's not bad. It's still too much protein. But where's the protein coming from? Well, it's coming from all the foods in the diet. So this is more than adequate protein. This is like 13% of calories as protein. You only need 10. So, and some older folks may actually need 13% of their calories as protein. So this is still quite sufficient for just about anyone in this group. Now, the cholesterol amount is perfect. That's 0. The amount of fat in the diet, a percent of calories is about 1/4. 25% of calories is fat, which is about perfect. You need that much really to get your antioxidants. And the saturated fat is excellent at little under 4% of calories. Very hard to get a heart attack if you don't have plaque in your arteries. In fact, it's impossible. Ischemic heart attacks, plugged artery heart attacks, the common kind of heart attacks, and strokes can only happen if you have plaque in your arteries. Unfortunately, with this kind of diet, you simply cannot get an ischemic heart attack or stroke because there's no plaque to break off, to plug an artery, to clot. It just isn't there, which is a very good thing. Now, as far as good things go, these people are very happy in the bathroom because the fiber is twice as much as you need. Fiber from food is always a good thing. Fiber also helps you feel full on a diet. When you eat, and your stomach has stretch receptors, and you feel full, and you're satisfied with your meal. And you need a little bit of fat, like 25%, to feel full, too. It's very important. So where'd the fiber come from? Beans, avocados, bread, oats, papaya, tortillas, and Swiss chard. They also have carotenoids, polyphenols, and there's no excess saturated fat in the diet. So this diet's looking pretty healthy. The carotenoids are really excellent. There's an amazing amount of brain cell protective and body cell protective carotenoids in this diet. And the antioxidants of vitamin C is very, very high, and the vitamin E is nicely high. And everything's good except vitamin B12 is missing. So if you're eating strictly plant-based diet, you're going to need to take vitamin B12. However, if you're not eating a strictly plant-based diet, you're going to need to take vitamin B12. Because people say on the Atkins diet, their stomach and intestine become damaged and are no longer able to absorb the vitamin B12 because the parietal cells in the stomach that make stomach acid also make intrinsic factor. And if you can't make intrinsic factor, you cannot absorb vitamin B12. So clinically, people with vitamin B12 deficiency discovered in blood tests are people who eat tons of vitamin B12, but they can't absorb it. So I think the short and the long is we should all consider taking vitamin B12. No upper limit, no safety problems, very cheap. Why not? Calcium was a little low on this diet. And this is a problem with a vegan or plant-based diet. Calcium can be low unless you're very careful. Now, it should be at least 800, and it was only 727. Why 800 instead of 1200? Because of the low protein and low sodium. You see, the sodium is actually a little bit less than excessive rather than more. No packaged food on this diet at all. Well, the next diet is a diet developed by many doctors who treat heart attack victims who want to dissolve the plaque from their arteries as fast as possible. In Dr. Esselstyn's book, within 2 years, he has images of heavily plaqued arteries dissolving until they are devoid of plaque. And the person becomes, in his words, heart attack proof. So they've developed this diet. I think it could be better, but you can see what it is. Basically starch, vegetables, fruit, corn tortillas for breakfast with spinach, brown rice, corn kernels, and salsa. That sounds pretty good, but not at all like a breakfast. Lunch, chips, refined beans, green chilies, olives, tomatoes, green onions, and salsa. Well, there's going to be some carotenoids, vitamin C, and other good things there. Dinner is a white rice salad. Wow, okay. Green onions, mung bean sprouts with spinach, avocado, mandarin orange, water chestnut, fat-free Dijon dressing. You know, when you have these things in here, like the spinach, has wonderful carotenoids, but unless there's a fatty trigger in the meal, the carotenoids will not be absorbed. Studies on this have shown that, you know, they feed the person the spinach and they test the bloodstream. There's no carotenoids in there. And then they feed the person spinach with a couple of almonds. It triggers the cholecystokinin, it triggers the gall bile. All of a sudden, the fatty carotenoids can be absorbed into the bloodstream, and you get full benefit. So in a way, I think this is a mistake to give no fat at all, because you can't digest vitamin E, same problem, can't be absorbed without a fatty trigger. So maybe it's gone a little far.
The avocado is fat.
Yes, the avocado is in the dinner, and that might be enough to trigger fatty digestion, but I picked one of the better diets that had avocado. Usually they say no avocado. This is for general public, not for his heart attack patients where they take out the avocado. So good point, sharp eye there.
Now, oats for lunch.
Yeah, oats have a little bit of fat, but not too much. Oh, olives, yeah. Yeah, they have a little bit. Fiber was good on this diet. Cholesterol was perfect, none. The saturated fat was extremely low at 1.5%. But the alpha-linolenic acid, the essential omega-3, is too low. You need 2 or 3 grams in a day, and he didn't even get 1 gram. So it's another bone that I would have to pick with this diet. Now, how did he do in carotenoids? Great. Vitamin C was adequate, but vitamin E is the worst ever. Almost no vitamin E in this diet. And we need vitamin E to protect our brains and our bodies. It's a human requirement. Calcium was also very low, 353 milligrams, and should be 800 on a low-protein diet like this one. And zinc was too low. No, I want to go back to the protein was 45 grams, should be 46. So here's an example of a low-protein diet. But he's only getting 1,080 calories. We need at least 2,000 calories just not to lose weight. So here's an example of how you can have a diet that's half the calories and just a smidge low in protein. Probably do fine on 45 instead of 46, but it is officially a little bit low. The calcium's too low, and the zinc happened to be too low on this one too. So now our last diet, you've been very patient, and then we'll see how they all stack up. That's the fun part. The raw vegan diet. Now people think of raw vegans as kind of nutty because they eat food that hasn't been cooked. The advantage of eating food that hasn't been cooked is that it's whole food. It hasn't been packaged and processed and ground up and all that stuff. So for breakfast, a large papaya, that looks good. We grow them on our farm. I miss our ripe papayas. 3 large bananas, a cup of sprouted wheat crackers with raw spinach smoothie, including an ounce of cashews. Now that's a lot of food. Raw vegans eat a lot of food. You have to eat a lot of food because there's not a lot of calories in it. Lunch, 1 small avocado, half cup of almonds, 12-ounce sprouted pinto beans, a 1/4 cup of whole sesame seeds. So there's some important nutrients going on here. Dinner, 4 ounces of zucchini made in a spiralizer so it looks like spaghetti. You know, get up. 1 cup of soaked oatmeal, not cooked, soaked, and a 1/4 cup of sunflower seeds. What do you think? Will this meet our human needs at all for anything? Well, how's the protein? Wait a minute. This has 80 grams of protein. We only need 46. How about that? I bet you wouldn't have guessed that. Fiber, plenty of fiber. No problem going to the bathroom for these raw food vegans, that's for sure. Cholesterol, perfect, none. Saturated fat, really excellent. Now, here's really interesting because the saturated fat is 6, very good. But the total fat in the diet is 48% of this diet is fat from the nuts and the avocado. But they're so low in saturated fat. So here we have an example of good fat versus bad fat. This is good fat. So it's not a problem to get excess fat. Now, a diet like this with so much fat, a person would need to be active to burn it up. But on a diet like this, you tend to be a lot more active. For a person who's lethargic and wishing to lose weight, this type of diet for a short term would probably be perfect because energy is not a problem and losing weight is not a problem. So how's the vitamin A? Superb. Best carotenoids in the bunch. How's the vitamin E? Superb. Plenty of nuts and seeds. How's the vitamin C? Through the roof, 400 milligrams. Can't get much better than that with any diet. The antioxidants are truly superb. Now the calcium came out fine too. Isn't that interesting? Enough nuts and seeds and all those green vegetables and the sesame seeds, the calcium. Sesame seeds are very rich in calcium. Sesame tahini is a wonderful calcium source, matter of fact. Also an excellent source for gamma-tocopherol form of vitamin E. It's little known. Minerals all look great. So let's compare now. This is the fun part. Let's give our awards to the worst and best diet. For fiber, the Atkins diet loses at 0.15 grams of fiber. You need 20 at least, and 40 would be healthy. 0.15, I just don't understand this. The winner would be the vegan whole food diet at 77 grams of fiber. These are very regular folks. For carotenoids, the worst diet, Atkins again, makes the worst possible showing, a tiny amount of carotenoids. Also the SAD diet, the zone diet, and that transition vegetarian diet, very, very poor. Now you can do all of this to your own diet and all of your friends and family using the diet doctor, analyze your own diet. Find out what your fiber is. Find out what your carotenoids are. Unlike other programs, mine breaks out the individual carotenoids. So if macular degeneration is a problem, you can see how much lutein and an enantiomer, zeaxanthin, you're getting from food, and make sure to maximize those in food and not rely on little pills for those things. In fact, the vegan whole food diet, the low-fat diet, and the raw vegan diet scored fiber and carotenoids in green, means very good. And you can see the losers are in red. The zone diet didn't do well in carotenoids. So what else should we look at? Saturated fat. The loser, again, the Atkins diet, followed by the bulletproof diet and the transition vegetarian diet and the standard American diet. These diets just have too much saturated fat. We need 0, and they're giving us enough to increase our risk of the #1 killer in America, heart attacks, and #2 killer in the world, strokes. We don't want that. I hope you don't want that. I don't want that, and I don't want that for you. So the worst, the bulletproof diet. 180 grams of fat in this diet exceeded even the 148 in the SAD diet or the 125 in the transition diet. Now that's a lot of fat in that transition vegetarian diet too. The raw vegan diet had 121 grams of fat, but as we saw, not a problem because the percent of saturated fat's only 6%. In fact, the saturated fat was okay in the Mediterranean diet, not too bad in the zone and paleo diet, and excellent in the vegan whole food diet, the heart attack diet, McDougall, and the raw vegan diet. They're doing pretty good. The percent of fat, it tends to be a little bit high. Now, 61% is not the highest I've seen. There's actually a Polish diet with higher fat. And someone asked about a ketogenic diet. This is an example of a ketogenic diet with almost no carbohydrates and such enormously high amounts of saturated fat. Pretty stunning, isn't it? What can I say? How about antioxidants? Whose wins? Well, the raw vegan wins for both vitamin C and vitamin E, and the whole vegan diet also got excellent scores in both categories, vitamin C and vitamin E. Unfortunately, all the other diets were low in vitamin E. Well, 93% of Americans get too little vitamin E. 93% of the diets on this chart get too little vitamin E. My recommendation would be almonds or pecans to get your vitamin E, especially those delicious raw red walnuts. Oh, those are really good. They have the gamma-tocopherol, which has been shown to protect the brain so much more than others. This SAD diet, the Atkins diet, the transition vegetarian diet, and the heart attack diet scored very low on antioxidants, both vitamin C and vitamin E. So I couldn't recommend the heart attack diet because of that. I've talked to Dr. McDougall about that, and some of the other doctors who recommend these and saying, your diet's excellent, you're getting good results, but can't we please protect these people while they're recovering? And so far, no movement, but I'm continuing to work. So, calcium, protein, and sodium. Now, this is a bit of a complex graph we have here. The calcium, by the way, these diets are all built into the Diet Doctor. So if you buy a copy of the Diet Doctor, you can pick the Atkins diet or any of these diets and look through at how much of everything they have, how they're doing, as well as, of course, put in your very own diet. See how that's doing too. So for calcium, the number in parentheses and brackets shows you how much actual calcium the diet provided. When you compensate for the excess protein and excess sodium, the left of the brackets, you'll see the numbers that are the actual amount of calcium that's left over for you. For instance, in the SAD diet, it had 1,290 milligrams, excess of what you need, but because of the excessive protein and sodium, it's down to 685 compared to the 800 that you would need. Now, the Atkins diet only had 175 milligrams of calcium to begin with, but when you compensate for the excess protein and sodium, minus 319 milligrams, that's minus. You're losing bone mass every day you're on that diet, and that's very, very dangerous. None of us want bone breaks. There are other problems with low calcium too. Of course, teeth problems are a big problem with low calcium, and I think we're all old enough to know we don't want trouble with our teeth. The Atkins diet, minus 319. Now the zone diet did a bit better. It started out with 900 milligrams of calcium, but when compensated, only 335, quite inadequate. The paleo diet started out at 350, but went down to minus 240, a real bone-crunching diet. I don't think our paleo ancestors would have done very well with their bones that week. The bulletproof diet is the extreme example, starting out with only 284 milligrams versus at least 1,000 that we need. When corrected, minus 796. So you're almost getting the reverse amount of calcium you need each day. One could do a calculation of the total bone mass and how many years it would take until you were just a bowl of jelly, no bones at all. Needless to say, this is a very dangerous practice to eat a diet that is eroding your bones and teeth. Bones are have calcium removed immediately when it's needed, but building the bones back up takes a long time. So it's a good idea not to strip your bones of their calcium and then hope to build them up later, say when you switch to another fad diet. Very, very dangerous. The South Beach diet started with 878, not bad, but when compensated for all that excess protein, 143 grams of protein, almost 100 of which is excess, and then the extra sodium, they got 295. Not the worst in the bunch, because at least it was a positive calcium, but still tremendously low. Now, the transition vegetarian diet, when compensated for the excess protein, still got 1,248 milligrams of calcium. So one positive thing about that diet is plenty of calcium. I can't think of a lot of other positive things about that diet. The Mediterranean diet did fine. The vegan whole food diet was a little low in calcium, and one of the ways that I compensate for that is, personally, I take a brain and body food which has enough calcium to push that back up to where it belongs. So that's where a supplement can come in handy. I also try to eat enough calcium every day with richer foods. The raw vegan diet did great on calcium. So when you can see those protein amounts, and the sodium was excessive in the standard American diet, the Atkins diet, and the transitional vegetarian diet, very high. We really only need 1,000 milligrams, and over 2,000, really pushing it for heart attacks and strokes. So calorie density, well, the fuller you feel, the lower the calorie density. So if it's a 1, like the paleo diet, you're feeling pretty full on that diet. There's a lot of roughage in that diet. But a bulletproof diet at about 2 calories per gram, you don't feel as full as you could. So it makes it a little bit less valuable as a weight loss diet. So let's sum it up. What do we need? Perfect protein instead of too much. I think can we all agree that too little protein is a myth? Less saturated fat, and perhaps less fat in general, unless it's very healthy fat, say from nuts and seeds and avocados and olives. Less refined carbohydrates, wonderful. As far as carbs in general, the whole grains, such as oat groats or brown rice, very healthy. They have a lot of nutrients in them. Did you know that vitamin B1 thiamine was first discovered when they milled brown rice into white rice in Japan? And the children got a disease, and they said beriberi, which means it hurts. They never discovered vitamin B1 until they took it out of a whole food. Turns out brown rice has a lot of B vitamins and is very, very healthy for you. And very slow absorption. So as far as diabetes, it's great. White rice is the opposite, very dangerous. Vitamins and minerals, the essential vitamins and minerals must be taken every day. You could possibly eat well enough to where you got every vitamin and mineral every day. I think it's unlikely. So I take the brain and body food, which we developed in our clinic. When we did our test, the Hawaii Dementia Prevention Trial, people who couldn't be in the trial and get the free supplements, we made this supplement so it has most of the things we use for anti-dementia. It turns out it's a pretty useful multivitamin with carotenoids and vitamin C and vitamin E and all those minerals I mentioned, and calcium, of course. So that's how I do it. I eat the best possible diet I can, and then I supplement to make sure I'm not low in manganese or zinc or sodium, or not sodium. Nobody's low in sodium. But any of those little minerals that we may need. Keeping our sodium low pretty much means less packaged food. Packaged food tends to have sodium, and restaurant food tends to be high in sodium. We need to make sure we get enough calcium, keep our bones strong. Also, vitamin K, vitamin D, and magnesium are essential for calcium. We're going to get a good talk about vitamin D coming up, and I'm looking forward to it. We need lots of food fiber, the more the merrier, and more antioxidants. Well, this is my presentation on comparing diets for brain and body health. What do you think?
We have a few minutes for questions. Or anybody? We've got a hand over here.
And what diet do you recommend if the person has celiac disease?
Well, if you have celiac disease, obviously you're going to want to avoid gluten in any form. And other than that, I would recommend a diet that most closely approximates the needs of the human body, that would best satisfy our vitamins, minerals, antioxidant needs without being excessive in saturated fat or cholesterol. And which diet that you saw tonight would you say that would be?
You would say it's the raw vegetarian diet.
The raw vegan diet or the whole food plant-based diet. Those two well, why would I say it? Because they do most closely approximate the needs of a human being. It's not a guesswork here, it's deduction, it's science. So yes, I think that'd be a great diet because it most closely gives you what you need and doesn't give you too much of what you don't need.
But you'd have to take out wheat, barley, and rye
Right.
from
Right,
that
and,
diet.
and add quinoa and millet and buckwheat and all of the grains that don't have gluten in them. Yeah, naturally.
I noticed you didn't mention anything about vitamin D. I was wondering if you can touch base on vitamin D a little bit.
The reason why I didn't mention vitamin D is because our next lecturer is a world expert in vitamin D, and I'm going to defer to him for that. So just keep your ears open for a little longer, and you get everything about vitamin D.
I just want to make a remark. I went to Dr. McDougall 3 times, and we had fruit for breakfast and oatmeal, along what you described. So it's not just, because what you described is no fruit in there. And there was fruit and oatmeal and a little bit of flax seeds.
Right, the diets all vary, and McDougall has a huge cookbook, and his website has zillions of recipes. So it's a bit of a challenge to pick one kind of in the middle of what he does. All of the recipes I have analyzed on his diet are very low in vitamin E. None of them come anywhere near have enough. Some of them do have enough carotenoids and vitamin C because of the fruits and vegetables.
I got it. And then the proponent of eggs, also they say that there's vitamin D in eggs. Is that right?
Vitamin D in eggs, very low content, couldn't be relied upon to supply your needs. And well, again, you're going to hear more about vitamin D coming up soon. So there's really nothing in eggs that we need, that we can't get better elsewhere, safer.
What does a Steve Blake typical day diet look like?
Okay, is it time for true confessions? I haven't eaten meat in 47 years, since I was 20 years old. I'm 67, I feel pretty good. Typical diet involves usually oats in the morning with much more fruit than oats. So I use a big bowl and, papayas, blueberries, bananas, all fresh organic from our farm. And so breakfast, often I'll have some nuts and seeds to satisfy. We also often, because we grow avocados, we grow 12 varieties of avocados on our farm, each one better than the next. And some of them very large and delicious, and I do miss them. They're falling right now. So we may have oatmeal with avocado for breakfast with Anna Coulter's delicious red salt on it. And boy, that makes a fabulous, satisfying breakfast. I happen to be married to a televised chef, Catherine Blake over here, and so she makes up just gourmet vegan food for a lunch and dinner, and we snack on fruit all day and nuts and seeds, and actually the vegan whole food diet you just saw in the presentation is one of my own.
I could answer a little more carefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she knows I'm happy to eat what she puts in front of me.
Here's what Steve Blake eats in a day. Okay, that's the breakfast. And then lunchtime might be something like squash and a head of kale. Now, when we have greens, we don't have a little bit of greens. We fill up on the greens. And then we have maybe squash and onions on the side. With lately, I've been using sesame tahini as a topping with the red salt. And it's really satisfying. Maybe I'll put in a little umeboshi plum vinegar or something. Later on for dinner, if he gets hungry, he'll have complicated whole grain with nuts bread with peanut butter. That's a snack. And then dinner time might be, I might cook a grain, rice or oats or quinoa. Or
we often don't have a grain.
Oats. Yeah, we often don't have a grain, but it'll be another different kind of vegetables, and we eat a lot of vegetables. Now, my question to you, sir, is what health complaints do you have?
I don't have any.
I think she's a plant.
No health conditions at 67, no blood problems, no medications, and my short runs over an hour.
Well, and what I appreciate at dinner is that you have a sense of humor about food too, because you realize that it's impossible to eat perfectly, and so he's joking about would you pass the GMO soy, the GMO tofu was the comment. So we had a couple questions here.
Food's a lot of fun.
It looked like you were recommending margarine, which was a bit of a surprise.
One of the diets had margarine in it. And for people in the clinic, for instance, who've had a stroke and don't want another stroke, which is 9 to 15 times as likely after your first stroke, they need to watch their saturated fats very carefully. Now, many of the people who come into the clinic are eating butter. So we often suggest to them a butter substitute that does not have trans fats and has a very nice fatty acid profile, such as Earth Balance or Smart Butter. And so those two I would recommend, but most margarines have tons of trans fatty acids and they're just horrible, and so I wouldn't recommend those. So it really depends, and it's not that I'm recommending them, they appeared in one of the diets, not in my diet. We don't buy margarine or use it at home.
I'm just looking here at the raw vegan diet, and it has here for breakfast 1 large papaya, 3 large bananas, 1 cup sprouted whole wheat crackers with raw spinach smoothie, including 1 ounce of cashews. That would probably be like a whole day for me, just that one thing.
Well,
I mean, that's, who can eat, I have maybe 1 banana for breakfast or something. So these amounts seem like
I could eat
double.
that for breakfast, but then I'm working on an organic farm. You may be sitting at a desk. So it depends on your activity levels, how much you want. And you'd be surprised how much you can eat. The large papaya that's fresh off the tree, it goes down so easily. It's just no trouble at all.
So anyway, say you take those numbers like for the raw vegan diet and you cut them in half. So then I guess you're just going to do more supplements then to make up for the if you took all those numbers there and cut them in half or 2/3 or something like that.
I think that the raw vegan diet is perhaps not so sustainable. It's a little hard to continue. Usually what we like to do is get perhaps half of our diet raw, perhaps 1/4 of our diet fresh fruit, and 1/4 of our diet raw vegetables.
Yeah.
And then 1/4 of our diet cooked something, sweet potatoes or grains or something. And then so we vary between 50 to 75% raw rather than all raw. And that seems to work out better because you need to eat less quantity of food, as you mentioned. Yeah. In the raw diet, you get this giant quantity of food. And what happens with the raw breakfast is it doesn't happen sitting at the table for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So a raw breakfast takes, a little nibbling here and a little nibbling there, and it might take an hour to eat all that stuff, as you correctly noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, the basic idea, if you're doing, say, 2/3 of what you had up there on the screen.
You'd still be through the roof for carotenoids and antioxidants. You'd be doing great for calcium, even at 2/3, better than almost any of the other diets. You get your minerals, you'd still be doing fine.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Thanks for your question. That was good.
Let's make this the last question. If you have other questions coming up to the Steve after the we start the break.
Thank you. How about number 1, olive oil, and number 2, cooked beans, dried beans cooked? How do you feel about those?
Yeah, I think olives are fantastic, and olive oil is not as good as olives. Olives are much better. So if you're thinking of pouring olive oil over a salad, put some chopped olives on it. You get all that flavor, but it hasn't been extracted. All of the fiber, most of the vitamin E, most of the polyphenols, even in extra virgin olive oil. So there's a whole chapter in my book on fats and oils on the processing of oils. And extra virgin olive oil has less processing than the other, is not normally extracted with hexane. Although if it's not extra virgin olive oil, it may be extracted with hexane, a very powerful neurotoxin, very undesirable. And the other question was? Red beans. Oh, red beans. Beans are fantastic foods. They're like a superfood. One of the fun things I did with a diet doctor is I put a button in, a one food button. You can push the button and say red beans, and it'll analyze your diet as if you ate 2,200 calories of only red beans. And you can see how well that would satisfy your nutritional needs. And it does a beautiful job. Perfect food, beans. Yeah, they have to be cooked so the lectins are inactivated, of course.
Okay, let's thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.